This is the Black Information Network Daily Podcast, and I am your host, Ramses Ja. And sometimes the amount of stories that make their way to us means that we simply can't cover everything that comes our way. But from time to time, a story just stays with me, and I feel compelled to share it with you and give you my thoughts. And now, one more thing. Okay, so we've already had a bit of a conversation about this. Kamala Harris is now the presumed Democratic nominee for president for 2024. And in a prior episode, we explained, the events that unfolded on the Sunday the announcement was made by President Joe Biden, stepping aside and endorsing her. And the conversation required a lot more delving into. And as you may know, when it comes time to delve into things, I like to use both sides of my brain. And indeed today, I have the other half of my brain with me. So Q Ward and I will be discussing this interesting development in the story. I think that, where we are now, looking at Kamala Harris as the front runner for the Democratic Party, it has infused energy, excitement. It has shaken up the board a bit, and it has renewed interest from the Democrats in actually getting out and voting. And not enough can be said about Black women in this moment. For longtime listeners, we've had the conversation before. Black women have been the most consistent voting bloc in the United States. Black women voting for Democrats. And, recent polls had suggested that Black women were starting to lose interest in a ticket where Joe Biden was at the top of the ticket, especially in light of recent events surrounding Donald Trump that has galvanized his supporters behind him. It just felt like a hopeless fight to a lot of Black women, and one not worth participating in. This is my belief. But now with Kamala Harris being at the top of the ticket, I know that Dr. Camilla Westenberg, who is an AKA, and if you're listening to this show, there's a good chance you know exactly what the AKAs are. Suffice it to say, if her reaction is any indication of the way Black women feel across America, at least we know that this moment has significant historical value for the group of people that Q and I both consider to be as close to God as we can be on this earth. And we're going to talk about who Kamala Harris is and why this moment it deserves our respect and our support, and we need to heed the gravity of this moment. But you're going to hear all this stuff elsewhere, but I really think that we have something interesting to add to the story, because as we sat down to have this conversation today, Q played a video for me, and I would like for you to hear this video again. So introduce the video for us, just so that we have it. And just before you start, I learned some things that I didn't know before, and I consider myself to be pretty politically engaged. So go ahead.
So this video is from TikToker Drew Comments. This is on his TikTok. I actually discovered it on someone else's page, but it's important to credit the creator of the video.
Yeah.
Drew Comments on TikTok, and he's talking about the idea of Kamala Harris and kind of debunks some myths that people believe to be true about her and her career as a politician and a litigator.
Cool. So now before you play the video, I want you to know that he says a lot of things, and we're going to play the video in its entirety. We implore you to research these. We haven't independently fact checked them, and that's not our way to do it. But the reason we're sharing it is because it did present a different set of optics, particularly the ones that Q brought to me, which we're going to get to in a second. So let's do the video.
And these things are easier to confirm than you might imagine.
Yeah, very easy.
Google is free.
Yeah, but we haven't. I'm just full disclosure. We haven't gone through them line by line. Really, we're more interested in the shifting of the optics around her as a candidate, where once upon a time we just took it at face value that she was more problematic than it seems that she really is. So let's go into the video.
Kamala Harris. It ain't the fact she black. Howard University, Alpha Chapter, aka. It's enough to get my attention, but it ain't enough to get my vote. All skin folk ain't kin folk. You better check her record. And I did that, and I found out some things. She dope. Yo, Kamala Harris is almost exactly what you expect from a prosecutor with the credentials I just mentioned. First off, you ain't even qualified to talk about her unless you heard about Back on Track. That's like trying to discuss Jay-Z without hearing Reasonable Doubt. Back on Track was a restorative justice program for 18 to 24-year-old, first-time, non-violent, low-level drug offenders. Instead of jail or a charge on the record, folk got sent to boot camp where they got job readiness training, parental training, earned a GED, got connected with employers for careers, got their credit fixed. That's a pretty good deal. I'm finna go sell an ounce right now. Okay, but for real, once people graduate that program, she threw their charges out like it never happened. As DA of San Francisco, she made social services help parents of chronically and habitually truant kids. Twitter told y'all she was threatening them with jail. Cap.
The most important issue for me really is that we get these kids into school. The goal is not to prosecute parents, it's to get these children to go to school. We are not talking about hooky and playing hooky, and frankly, we all did, okay?
Nah, they were missing 40 to 80 days. That ain't hooky, that's hiatus. And nobody went to jail. I checked. Sister got them kids back in school and kept them out of incarceration and the grave. She also created reentry initiatives so people in jail could get out and not go back. Convicted over 1,200 domestic abusers. Prosecuted child molesters, rapists, and violent criminals. Transnational gangs. Got $20 billion back for Cali from the big banks after the foreclosure crisis. Created a civil rights division in the San Francisco DA's office. When she first got in, she threw the charges out for the activists and the protesters who got arrested. Shawty a hero. Senator, no disrespect. Not to mention incarceration rates for marijuana charges fell each year she was AG. So much for that theory about her believing in mass incarceration. But Kamala Harris, I'm excited. I'm excited about her plans for gun reform and the HBCU agenda. I'm excited about women's equal pay and the return of consent decrees. I'm excited about black home ownership and a black woman on the Supreme Court. I'm excited about black businesses booming and the D9 step show the day before her inauguration. Y'all know they having a step show. And I'm gonna be there too with an $8 fish plate and some mambo sauce. At the end of the day, she's the strongest and most prepared and exactly what America needs right now. And I look forward to seeing her stroll into the White House in 2021. That's an AKA joke. I hope she don't make her cabinet members probate though. Nah, seriously, 4 to 8 years, the D9 jokes are gonna be hilarious. I still ain't been the same since somebody said she gonna put AKA tags on the back of Air Force One.
So, one of the things that I feel it's important to share is that going into 2020, the 2020 election cycle, we both were, Q and I both were, concerned about Kamala Harris. Is she a black woman? Absolutely. Does that mean certain things? Yes, we know that she's not going to have certain tendencies that we're used to seeing in that position. You know what I mean? She sounds, looks, moves like something we're a little bit more familiar with, and for what that's worth, it provides a degree of comfort. But coming out of 2020, you can imagine anybody that was even remotely associated with police departments, mass incarceration, the prison industrial complex, whatever, you name it. That was problematic, especially someone that believes in that system and is an active participant in that mechanism. And as far as I remember, that was the only thing, but that's a big deal, right? Especially because you got to think at that time, we were very much challenging that specific system, those specific institutions. And, you know, when we were looking through all the candidates who was going to be the nominee in 2020, obviously there was Bernie Sanders, there was Joe Biden, there was, Pete Buttigieg, and there was a whole field of them. And there was Kamala Harris, right? And you would think that for a lot of us, putting our support behind her would have been a no-brainer. But I think the timing of that, coupled with the lack of context, a lack of information. And I admit that I'm guilty of this because, as I mentioned, I learned something just when we shared this video and then the conversation that Q was having with me. It helped me to reframe a lot of what I know to be true about Kamala Harris. And indeed, reframe a lot of what is being discussed online about why she is a problematic candidate for Democrats and for Black people. So the first thing that I want to do is ask you to re-explain to me, or I guess complete explaining, because we actually started the conversation and I will stop a conversation in the middle of it and say, nope, we got to turn the mics on. So, or I guess start over with the explanation and then stick the landing. Let's talk about what she actually did before becoming a senator and the vice president, and what that means and how it is possible to have those optics work against her when she may have actually, based on what we're hearing in the video and what the little bit that we were able to research, what she was actually doing with that position.
So sticking the landing, I'm not sure I'll do, because there's still a lot for you and I both to learn with regard to a new possible candidate for president of the United States. Mm-hmm. But I think one thing that was intentionally disingenuous in its premise was disqualifying her from being credible or qualified to do the job she's doing now because of the stances and positions that she held in her previous career. It's kind of an apples to oranges kind of thing. It'd be like disqualifying a professional baseball player from playing football because he hit too many home runs while playing baseball, and that doesn't translate to football. Well, of course it doesn't, but we're not disqualifying on the merit of them not being good at baseball, right? So her prior career as an attorney, a prosecutor, and then Attorney General of California means that it was in the best interest of her office to be quote unquote hard on crime. Now, you and I have always held a very, very clear and straightforward position on law enforcement and prosecution, because I was going to say seems, but we have enough data to say this as fact. It's harder on poor people of color.
Yeah.
People of color in general, but poor people of color,
that's a tough one.
It is rolling, a rock, a boulder up a mountain.
Yeah.
So she was a prosecutor. She was the highest ranking attorney in the state of California. The entire job is to prosecute criminals. And when you position that, especially in 2020, as a Black candidate, you're the diversity on the ticket, you're the minority on the ticket, you're the woman on the ticket, you're the Black person on the ticket. With how law enforcement has always treated us in this country, it's the only reason that Black people would pause when it comes to supporting you.
Yeah.
And I think without having the full context of the way she enforced the law and the way that she was as a prosecutor, right? Because her conviction percentage would be based on decisions made by a judge when she's the prosecutor, when she's the presiding attorney for the state versus whoever you are.
Yeah, state of California versus, right.
But the context that now seems intentionally left out is sentencing. Because what we've learned is that she would take those first time offenders, nonviolent, typically drug distribution, small amounts, and create a program for them.
Economic, yeah.
Prior to serving said sentence. And if you complete this program, not only do you not serve the sentence, but the charges are thrown out like they never happened. Incentivizing people to reform, teaching new skills, providing those that had not finished high school with a GED, helping them repair their credit, and then reinserting them into society as a person more, not just more willing, but more able to be a successful member of society. It's been positioned before like she was in favor of mass incarceration because her conviction rate was really high. But if you were not a person in her eyes that deserved to be in prison, and typically the type of people that we described just really need another chance, an actual opportunity, and not just these people, but most quote unquote criminals, the circumstances that they were born into and that they live in create the behavior that has been deemed criminal. Because even then, right, there's certain parts in the country now, and you have to help me remember where it's now illegal to be homeless.
Yeah, homelessness is criminalized in a lot of places.
So now you're criminal for not having anything, right? So when we say the word criminal, there's this stigma and this connotation that comes with it that in a lot of cases is undeserved. But if I'm starving and I steal a piece of fruit, yeah, I broke the law. But using the word criminal to categorize me as the same as someone who unalives someone and putting us both in the criminal bucket.
That's not the same. Yeah.
There's degrees to this, or there's levels to this, as the young people would say.
Yeah.
So diving into not just what she did, but how and to what end gives you an entirely different picture of her, not just as a candidate, but as a person. It kind of gives you a better idea of where her heart lies. And even though statistics and results favored her as a strong, tough on crime attorney general, when you hear about programs like this and her even creating a bridge for those who have already been incarcerated to re-enter society as better members of our society after they've served their time, and taking some people who were arrested for protesting and for being activists and totally overturning those cases. Yeah. Those are things we've never heard before today.
Yeah.
So I think it's important for listeners and for those who may be shy to support her, not because you don't want to support a black woman, but because there's some things in her career past that gave you some pause. I think having more information, especially this type of information, will remove the stigma and the hesitancy. Now, of course, you and I know that there are some people, mostly men, that cannot get behind the idea of a woman leading them. God bless their hearts. God bless them for just being wrong. I don't know how to say it.
God help them
more kindly.
God help them. That's probably the best way.
But for those who withhold their support because they thought different of her and her previous position, I think just do a little bit more research. We are very, very quick to accept things we hear and read as fact without doing any of our own research. And not only do we have to be more diligent than that with that, but we have to be better at it. Because your own research can't be just watching another TikTok, right? We played a TikTok video for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do some scholarly research. You know, go to a library if you need to, or find out the proper way to vet sources so that you know that you're getting actual data and not just somebody who's good at painting a narrative. Because this young man did not spend a lot of time trying to convince us. He just presented us with information, and I said it's easy to look up because I did. You know, we, like Ram just said, we didn't line by line fact check, but the big points that he made, I just Googled them, and from the right sources, especially those in most cases that say .gov or .edu. Of course, that's not a
it's not an endorsement, blanket endorsement of all of them.
That's not a blanket endorsement of all, but those are good places to start. Where you can get information that's accurate and in some cases even non-biased.
Now, I want to add some more here. Kamala Harris is, now that I'm taking a more critical look at her, because to be fair, back in 2020, when she was a candidate, I was still on the Bernie bus because I was on that since 2016. There was nobody that was saying the things that I think ultimately, long term, this country should aspire to.
Yeah, I'm still blown away by the lack of support for everything Bernie introduced as potential policy.
Yeah.
Even if Congress would have blocked him from doing it, a person that thinks the way that he does and wanted to do the things that he wanted to do, seems like everyone would have been like
a good human being. Yeah, he's just a good man that, and he was brilliant in the way he laid everything out, and it just needed its day in the sun. It needed a chance, and you know, the Democrats felt that there were people that were more electable and would appeal more to centrists. And so Bernie never got that shot. But as a result of that,
most independents don't in our current political structure. That's just a kind of truth that we have to accept.
Yeah.
The right and the left kind of won't let the center or any other independent party exist.
Yeah.
They kind of like smash them out.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fair. The thing though is that for Bernie, sucking up all of the young, enthusiastic voter oxygen in both of those primaries, it didn't leave much for Kamala Harris. I researched Kamala Harris to the degree that I researched Pete Buttigieg or any of the rest of them. You know what I mean? I probably researched Kamala Harris and Joe Biden about the same. I was a Bernie fan. So now that we're here, and we've talked about Kamala Harris before, especially when she first got elected. She was our Ebony Excellence on Civic Cypher. We did a deep dive, all that sort of stuff. But at that point, it's not like we have to consider whether or not she's going to be a person getting our vote. She just came along with Joe. We're voting for Joe. Really, we were voting against Trump.
Yeah.
So she just came with the House.
Make sure you bring that back up, because this, even until 3 days ago, we were voting against Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Now we have the ability to vote for Kamala
as the presumptive candidate.
Exactly.
Puts us in an entirely different
absolutely
mental space with regards to this election. But
yeah.
I'll let you continue.
Yeah. So now that we're giving her this critical examination, and to be fair, it may not be as critical as other outlets, but this is the Black Information Network. I'm a black man, and black women are God. A black woman is the reason that I'm breathing air right now. So, and I think Dave Chappelle said it best. Mother is the word. It's the same word for God on the lips of a child, right? So to me, there is no other truth, right? And so my critical examination might be a little less critical, and I'll cede that entirely. I know
it's also, to be fair to you, it's less critical because the intent is to be honest. The intent isn't to be negative. Right. So when your intent is to be negative, your critical examination is different. Let me find something and highlight the worst of a person.
Yeah.
What you're doing is examining a person more thoroughly, and presenting a more full and honest.
That's what I'm trying to say. But by contrast, other media outlets will be very, very, very unkind and unfair to her. And we cannot do that too.
No.
It is just not.
It's against the very necessity of what we do.
Right.
The reason that we exist,
we're not here for that.
Is because everyone else is doing that. That's why we're here.
Yeah, exactly. So, now that doesn't mean that I can't be fair. I know that Kamala Harris is a part of the same war machine that is bombing Palestine back to the Stone Age. I know that Kamala Harris has to secure the borders because a lot of people, they've made it into this thing that a lot of people
I think the problem would be, and the unfair thing would be, to make that unique to her though.
Right. Anybody would have to deal with that.
Our government is complicit. We listen to people say Joe Biden was, and Joe Biden has expressed some things that make that more accurate as of recently, putting himself in the category of Zionist out of his own mouth, not by someone else. But he did not stand alone in the decisions that were made or in his support of the state of Israel. So I think it's important to point out that our government as a whole has failed in the way that they handled that. That was not singular to the president of the United States.
And to be fair, Donald Trump would be doing the same thing,
if not worse.
Has said so. According to, I'm reading between the lines, what he's saying, but my interpretation of what he said is that he'd be doing the same thing. Or worse, as Q mentioned.
And now, for different reasons.
Yeah, exactly.
We can disagree with what Joe Biden believes is good and morally correct, but he at least believed that he was doing something morally correct. I know as fact that Donald Trump would not be making the decisions based on that.
On his own morality.
He wouldn't be making those decisions based on any level of morality.
Yeah.
It'd be profit based.
Yeah.
It'd be energizing his base based.
The interest of the country. Yeah.
Best interest
that sort of thing.
Based.
Yeah.
Not in what he believes is best for the American people or what he believes is best for the state of Israel or Jewish people or, of course, not Palestinian people. So I think Joe Biden was wrong, but he thought he was doing something that was actually right.
Yeah. One of the things that because we knew the announcement was coming before Sunday, we just did. And we had reason to believe that Kamala Harris was going to be the presumed Democratic nominee.
Or at least who our president endorsed.
Yes.
With this party, it's hard to tell.
Right now, they're kind of going through it. But one of my early thoughts, just while we're here, is that I had a conversation with a friend of mine. And we had a conversation about, forgive me, I'm going somewhere with this, but brace yourself. What would happen if he lost a child? If he lost his son? And he was trying to mount this defense for Israel. Okay. And he said, Ramses, I'm not like you. Like, you're like a good dad. I love my son, make no mistake, but I'm not like you. He's like, if something happened to my son, I can make another one. Right? He said this. Now, I'm not saying men feel this way across the board. I'm just saying it's inconceivable that I would ever encounter a woman that would say something like that. I'm sure they exist. You can find the exception, but I'm trying to discuss the rule here. But this is a friend of mine. And later I called him on and I told him he's wrong. He just said that for the sake of the argument. He loves his son and blah, blah, blah. So I don't want to, but I heard this. This happened in my lifetime, right? Now, I want to tell you a different story. When Q and I first started hosting Civic Cypher, our radio show, one of the first things that we sat down and we tried to do was involve a black woman. It breaks my heart even now, 4 years later, that we could not find a person who could be a part of that consistently in the beginning, who lived close by.
And I think it's important to point out, this is not because we don't know enough qualified black women, but you had to be qualified, you had to have the time, and you had to be willing to do this for free.
Yeah.
So all of those circumstances made it hard. I don't want you guys to hear this and think, oh, you guys don't know any black women that were intelligent or talented enough. No, that is not. That is not the case.
I want to
be a bunch of different circumstances that overlapped.
Yeah.
That made it tough.
And I want to be very clear here. We did have some conversations with the handful of folks who were qualified, because we do live. We're not based in Atlanta. We're not based in, Jacksonville, place like that. We're based in Arizona. And we're broadcasters. So our network is broadcasters, which you would think would make it easy to vet folks, but there are not a lot of black women broadcasters. So we were reaching into fields with people who maybe they'd be qualified for 3 of the 4 things we needed, but they weren't good on a mic, or they were shy, or whatever it was. The point is, as the show continued to progress, we ended up kind of the face of the show, and then by then it was kind of too late to fundamentally change the structure of the show. But in the formative stages of our show, we wanted the voice of a black woman on these microphones. This show was never about me and Q. The show was about a message. And when we're talking about police shootings and black women weeping on the sidewalk, holding their son's lifeless body because of a police shooting, put yourself there. Go out of your house 2 blocks down the street and sit on the sidewalk and imagine the last moments of your child's life taking place on a sidewalk. Not old, not long after they've buried you, on a sidewalk with blood everywhere. And we felt that the only people who would have access to that emotional vein would be black women. Black women have felt the pain the fullness of the painful part of this experience in this country since arriving on the shores.
And more than anyone else.
And I'm, for those that understand epigenetics, for those that feel like there's kind of a cellular connection that conveys experiences from one generation to the next, you'll understand why it was so important for us to involve Black women into this show. Now, the reason I say that, in contrast to the other story I told where my male friend said he can make another child, is that we knew that Black women could empathize better, and they could convey emotion better, and they could heed emotion because they have a better access to it. And regardless of what you say, men are logical, women are emotional, or whatever it is your philosophy is, all of us are both, because we're all human beings. And you can't have one without the other. If you do, you're probably on the spectrum somewhere. Not that that's a bad thing, but you aren't as likely to be building and shaping societies as a result of that. You know what I mean? Those are still very much considered differently abled individuals who have their own valuable contributions. I want to be very clear. I'm not talking down on any group or community. But when I have to re-examine the lens of Palestine and what's going on there, that was a big one for me. That one made it tough for Joe Biden and me in my book. And I know that they're all the same, and it's all the same government. And I know, as you said,
it's dangerous, however, because I've heard people say that, and I
didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that.
They're all the same.
I didn't mean it like that, but I know that people say that.
Because there are degrees.
Let me say this. I know that people will say that they're all the same. I feel like a woman seeing the images that we saw of those babies where their bodies is broken into pieces and they're covered in dust and blood, and that was the last moment of their life. I feel like there's at least the potential for a moment of pause. It's harder for me to imagine a woman being so calloused as to say, that's just war. That's how it goes. War is unpleasant. Just like it's easy for a lot of the men that I've seen who've said those very same things to say it. This is war. They can find a place in their mind to just push it. And a lot of times with women, they feel it. Maybe before they push it away, but they feel it at least. And that's something that I feel comes with the fair sex, with a person who has given birth and created life. When I was doing a lot more of dating once upon a time in my life, I would see people on social media, and women would have pictures of guns, and we live in the Southwest, so it's a thing. And that juxtaposition never made sense to me. You have the ability to create a whole life, and you are glamorizing this instrument whose only purpose is to end a life, and the juxtaposition, and you're showing off your body doing it. So they don't live in the same place.
It's important to point out, though, those pictures look strange to me no matter who it is.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you're not in the military or in law enforcement and you just have your weapon on you in a picture, people posing with their guns has always been a strange thing to me. Important to point out when we talk about Black women, and this is just another example of why in the book we're writing, there's an entire chapter dedicated to listening to
Black women
and following the leadership of Black women.
Yes.
Last night, I think this was last night, but shortly after, it was common knowledge to everybody that President Biden was stepping down or dropping out of this election cycle, this race. Tens of thousands of Black women jumped on a Zoom call and raised something in the area
50 million
of above $40 million.
Yeah, 47.7 or something. 49.7.
Like, this is just what they do, y'all. Like, when needed, they show up, and they have found a way to form what Ramses and I pushed back against this idea, because we say it with such pride that black people are not a monolith. That's kind of the problem sometimes. Sometimes we need a singular mission that we're all working on. And black women don't need us to coach them on it. They see it. The moment presented itself and they showed up. That's as simple as I can say it.
Yeah.
The moment presented itself and they showed up, because they always do. Even when we don't get there, it ain't because black women didn't try. It ain't because black women didn't show up and do what they were supposed to do. The data supports this. They showed up for her. They lifted her up. They found a way to find the best in her and highlight and amplify it. And all of us, in the event that things work out where we're still a democracy on the other side of this election, will have black women to thank once again.
Well, let me leave you with this. In the illustrious, immortal, magnificent words of the great philosopher Quentin J. Ward.
Uh-oh.
Somebody's going to be the president. And now we have the potential to be excited about somebody who is less problematic than we may have thought.
Far less.
That's not to say
far less problematic than the other candidate.
That's the main thing.
That part is very important to say out loud.
Yeah, that's the main thing. But online you're gonna see people posting up until the election and maybe even after, and throughout the presidency, throughout her presidency, I'm manifesting it. People will be critical of her, and they should be.
Some of it is mean-hearted, though. I see people posting pictures of her and her family.
That's the point.
Look at this black family. Like,
that's the point I'm making. And just kind of knowing where that line is, for yourself, what to consume, what to block. The block button works, y'all. Use it. Protect your peace. I think that, again, we're in better shape than I would have expected us to be in. And I like our chances now. With that said, this is for all of us to participate in. So as always, you are free to voice your opinion. And we would love to hear it and talk about that as well. So if you want to, you can follow me on all social media. I'm at Ramses Ja.
I am Q Ward on all social media as well. I think I am Q Ward or just Q Ward.
Yeah, either way.
I think. I don't.
Yeah, you'll see him. You'll know it's
find
him.
me.
Yeah.
A good place to start though is civiccipher.com.
That too. And then of course you can use the Red Microphone Talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app and get a hold of us. We would love to talk to you. And until we do, y'all,
peace.
This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show is produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the Red Microphone Talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media. Join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice from our perspective, right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.